Hi everyone, it is Kate back, better late than never, finally getting around to filming my 5-star TBR Victober reactions video. So last Victober 2017, I made a list of Victorian novels that I would be getting to throughout the year, and I was hoping they would be 5-star reads. I did not get to all of them, so most of them will be recycled except for a couple, which I will explain. So I'll just jump right into the books. And the first one on the list is Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. This, I still can't decide what I thought about Shirley. It consisted of 3 different parts, and basically the first third I was mildly interested. The second third I was very interested and really enjoyed it. And then the last third I just was not that invested in, and I really almost DNF'd this several times. And that's why you'll see I didn't finish more on this list, because I would get stuck in certain ones, which I think I should have just DNF'd, because I can always try them again another time, but I have a really hard time DNFing Victorian books. But I think I am getting to be a better judge of like the kind of Victorian book that I like, and I think I just would have been better off DNFing this, since it did make me take so long and slow me down in my project. The thing that I really did enjoy about this, though, was the friendship between our main character of Shirley and Caroline Helstone. It takes place in a really small village, and there's sort of some unrequited love that happens in it. Shirley doesn't come in until the second third of the book, and it was her friendship with Caroline that made it very compelling to read. Their friendship felt very akin to Diana Barry and Anne Shirley in Anne of Green Gables, and so I really loved their friendship in this. But pretty much all of the other relationships were fine, but they just didn't really interest me. And now that I'm reading more and more Victorian novels, I can really tell kind of, oh, this is good, but it's like a steady 3-star read. Because, and I'm so picky because I know that there are Victorian novels out there that will be some of my absolute favorites. And so it's just hard to read one, push through one that kind of pales in comparison. So yeah, kind of a mixed bag. I did really like some parts. I underlined a few quotes, but I think I won't be keeping this. I really do have limited book space. And so I think if I want to be able to buy new books, I need to only keep my absolute favorites. So yes. Then next on the list that I unfortunately did not get to and was on my TBR for this year was Eastland. Like I said, you'll see some books that I talk about later on just really bogged me down. And so then when I could have gotten to one that I've read about, I have my bookmark in here. I read around 40 pages of this during Victober, and I really loved every second, but I had just burned out on Victorian literature, and that's why I didn't continue. So I'm definitely getting to this one sooner rather than later, and I really do want to find out what happens in this, because I've only heard good things. Next on the list is Desperate Remedies. Desperate Remedies was also a very complicated book, in that I still can't decide what I thought of it, because for a lot of it, I wasn't sure if I even liked it. I wasn't sure if I was all that interested. And so it took a little bit of effort to get through it. I would only read 2 chapters at the most at a time. But when I got to the end, things really sped up, and I found myself a lot more interested in it. And I really did think the ending was a great ending. But now it's interesting to talk about the ones that I'm a few months out from, because I can see it's really not standing up, against the other ones that are way up there, like The Woman in White or North and South, or Daniel Deronda. It's just not, it's paling in comparison to those. So it's very interesting to read Desperate Remedies, and I realized I should give a brief synopsis. It is Thomas Hardy's attempt at a sensation novel. It was his first published novel, and it starts out where there is a woman named Mrs. Aldclyffe, and you see that she has a brief romance in the beginning, and then it is ended, and she does not marry the man that she was in love with. If fast forwards many years, when the man she was in love with did get married, and has his own daughter, Cytherea, that, you know, she's named after, which is very weird to be named after like an old girlfriend. Anyhow, the book starts when the two Cythereas meet. And it's a very interesting novel, and kind of all over the place. It seems as if Thomas Hardy doesn't know exactly what he wanted to do. It's really stayed with me, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a book that I adore, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it's a very, I'm just pondering, like, what did I even think of that book? And I'm having a really hard time still collecting my thoughts. It's just a very odd book. But like I said, the ending did make it more enjoyable for me, but it's an altogether very unique reading experience. But the ending, I think by the time he got to the end, he knew exactly what would make the book kind of complete. Next on the list is Garthowen. This is by Alan Raine, and I absolutely adored A Welsh Witch by Alan Raine. And this is just the story of a small Welsh town. And I know pretty much I want to read everything by Alan Raine just from A Welsh Witch. I did not get to this one, so it will be recycled. Next on the list is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is one that I kind of labeled as a book that Kate would not enjoy. I think primarily because there were mostly male characters in it, so I thought it wouldn't interest me, but this was a lovely surprise. It's very dark in tone, and it was very much what I was in the mood for. I'm pretty sure I read this in September. And so I was really gearing up for Victober, and I ended up reading it with my Victorian book club, and it was a really fun discussion because I think this is a very divisive book in that you either really enjoy it or really don't enjoy it. And the basic premise of this is that Dorian Gray is our protagonist, and he's just incredibly vain and incredibly self-absorbed, and has a painting done of himself. And as the painting is being painted, he wishes for that he could have a youthful face forever. And so some kind of little odd kind of magical realism thing happens where the painting takes on the aging and kind of takes on the true character of Dorian shows through in the face of the painting, and Dorian continues to stay just as beautiful as he is in the beginning of the book, even as his soul is just really just empty. So it's a very unique book. It was, like I said, I wasn't expecting. It really did feel kind of like magical realism with the painting changing. I really enjoyed it, and I'm really pleased that I read it. And I think this ended up getting 4 stars from me. So almost 5 stars, but not quite. Then I think the only reason it didn't get 5 stars was that I didn't really feel connected to many of the characters. But other than that, I highly recommend it. Next on the list was Esther Waters by George Moore. Sadly, did not get to this one, and I will be adding this to next year's list. And the next one on the list is The Heir of Redclyffe by Charlotte Mary Yonge. Did not get to this one, unfortunately, adding it to next year's list. The next one on the list is Beside the Bonnie Briar Bush by John Watson. This is about a small Scottish village, and he was a pastor. I think John Watson is his pen name. I almost think it's Ian Maclaren. I can't quite remember, but it just really intrigued me getting to see a little Scottish village. However, I tried this out. It was on my Victober TBR, and I knew right away it was not happening with the dialogue. Just sometimes dialogue isn't off-putting to me in Mary Barton, Sylvia's Lovers, A Welsh Witch, but sometimes for some reason, and I don't know why, it just really is. And it was incredibly off-putting to me right off the bat. And I think this next time around with this project, I'm just going to be more willing to DNF, like I said. And so I think it's just one, I know right away, it's a right book, out there for somebody who's maybe more familiar with older Scottish dialect, but that person is not me. So I'm just crossing it off the list. The next one is Clara Vaughan by R.D. Blackmore. This was on my Victober TBR, and I just had way too many things on my TBR, but it is totally getting put on next year's list because I really enjoyed the several chapters that I did read. And another one that I did not get to was Hester by Margaret Oliphant. Again, getting recycled onto next year's list. Next on the list is The Mystery of Mrs. Blencarrow / Queen Eleanor by Mrs. Oliphant. And this is one that the only way I can access it is through the Persephone copy, which runs around $20. So if I can find it used on Abe Books for not $20, I will, but I'm just not motivated enough to spend $20 on a Victorian book that I don't know if I'm going to like, if that makes sense. So it's basically off the list unless it just, ends up in my hands magically. And another one that I did not get to is No Name by Wilkie Collins. That is on next year's list now. And Katie from Books and Things and myself are already planning on buddy reading it in January. The last three on the list I did get to, however. The first is Armadale by Wilkie Collins. Armadale is really... I don't even know how much I want to say about it. It just feels rather spoilery to talk about it. But basically, there are two men who end up with the same name, and one with a past that is somewhat scandalous, and one who is supposed to inherit a big estate and lots of wealth. And so the two worlds collide, and repercussions of events that took place, around 20 years prior to these young men, both with the same name. And this just felt kind of all over the place. It was very plotting. It took a lot to get to the end. I kept reading to the end, kind of hoping it would just blow me out of the water. And I got to the end, and I read that all the way in, I think I finished it last January. And now thinking about it, it just really, it was not a memorable or super enjoyable reading experience for me, unfortunately. I said I want to read all of Wilkie Collins' books. So I need to keep in mind he did write a lot, and I can't expect to love all of his books. So yeah, unfortunately, it was a bit of a disappointment, and it was a bummer. That was the first book in my 5-star TBR predictions that I started with, and so it was a really rough start to the project because it took me about 3 months just to get through the book. Yes. Then one that was a very pleasant read on this list is Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K Jerome. This is a really humorous book. It's the story of these three friends who travel down the Thames River, and they are not really the most competent of sailors, but that does not, they don't let that stop them from going on this trip. It's just really humorous and slapstick. I was laughing out loud a lot, and it's also really not much of a commitment as far as Victorian novels go. I think it's less than 200 pages. The audiobook is delightful. It's just a treat of a book. I'm pretty sure I did give it 5 stars just because it was just so much fun. So I think it's a really good book out there if you want some variety in your Victorian reading, or also if you're feeling intimidated by Victorian novels. I think this is a really good one to try out, and it was very rewarding. So that was a really pleasant one on the list. Then we have Zoe by Geraldine Jewsbury. This was the last one on the list, and I buddy read this with Katie from Books and Things over Victober, and this unfortunately was a steady 3-star read throughout the buddy read. I kept hoping it would maybe be kind of ramped up to 4 or even 5 stars, but it did not, alas. Again, maybe if I hadn't read much Victorian literature, I would have thought it was better. But since I was reading at the same time David Copperfield and Deerbrook and Mary Barton, the Mayor of Casterbridge, all of those books, and it was just really paling in comparison. Katie and I thought, Katie suggested that maybe it would have been interesting if it had more at the beginning about Zoe's childhood and then ended halfway through the book. There's a big event that happens halfway through the book. And I thought that actually would have been really good, because after the big event happens, it felt basically like the climax, and then it just felt kind of plodding. It's just the story of Zoe's life, and eventually a priest comes into her life when she is married, and she falls in love with him. But it just felt, I didn't know exactly what Geraldine Jewsbury was trying to do with this story. I'm not sure. So again, you know, just a steady 3-star read. So nothing terrible, but nothing amazing. My 3 requirements for a 5-star read are characters I can connect with, an interesting plot, and beautiful writing. And this kind of really had sort of some of these. Like, I sort of connected with some of the characters. The writing was kind of, you know, beautiful and picturesque, and the plot kind of interested me. So yeah, all in all, kind of a lackluster Victorian read. So yeah, I don't think I was as nearly as good at predicting 5-star reads as I thought I was going to be, but I am right now going to film my 2018 5-star Victober TBR predictions. So hopefully I'll be a better judge with those books. And anyhow, I will see you guys for another video soon, and I hope you guys have a lovely day.